It should never just be on the runway. It should be also who's on the board and who's in the creative teams and who's in the supply chain. Because if you've got women of colour making the clothes, and then oh yes, we'll put one woman of colour at the back somewhere, and hopefully she's a bit light on the slide of the the double page spread. What's going on in that conversation from start to finish? It's about integrating, I think. But the sizes have got smaller for the vast majority of designers. If you look at the 90s and the era of the supermodels, yes, they were extraordinarily beautiful, but they were also, I worked as an assistant then and then as an editor, and those girls were healthy and worked out. And yes, it was this kind of like goddess Amazonian woman, but you look at some of the sizes of a lot of the shows now, all around the world, and those girls are way smaller than the girls 20 years ago. I'm not talking about when somebody brings in a kind of more representative, diverse casting, but as a rule, when you go to Paris or Milan or New York, those girls are tiny. Well, what on earth is that saying? I think we're in a different era. The catwalk arguably isn't even going to be as relevant in the next 10, 20 years. And people are engaging in conversations. You have audiences in a new way as models and as spokespeople. So how do you connect that with a changing didactic for the fashion industry because of the change that I think will happen to catwalk shows? So I think that allows for opportunity. But I think that's been happening because the Me Too movement has hit the fashion industry. I think it's only hit it. There's a long way more to go, but certain photographers now not being booked. We all knew. I spoke out at the end of the 90s about an experience I had with a photographer who's only now been dismantled at the end of last year, who was making millions each year. And I was told to be flattered by that incident.
But I think what you're pointing to and sort of what is comes up under the diversity conversation, of course, is that it's got to be behind the lens, it's got to be in leadership, there's got to be mixed opinions.
You can't just have it, oh, we've got to worry about what's going on over there, we've got to assess what's going on within, how are the interns being treated? Fashion assistants have been doing, but fashion assistants, the Instagram site, I've been working with them, and the stories that have been coming up for them has been, to me, someone that started over 20 years ago. I'm like, still? I think it's about, for me, what's very critical and has been for the last few years is breaking down echo chambers. So I worked in an echo chamber that I wasn't quite aware was an echo chamber, and then I went on a mentoring scheme for women to go into politics. I ended up working in Westminster, and I was in another echo chamber. And I'd look around the room and I'd be like, there's definitely no one like me here. And we're talking about Brexit, or we're talking about this, and it's like, Jesus Christ, back here I've got all these people screaming, but they're not in the room, and I have to use this opportunity of this access, because if I don't, I'm worried that it's not being heard. And that has driven me through, every level of not quite knowing what I'm doing, but yes, I've just got to do it, because the consequences of not doing it felt epic, and I can't put it any other way, and that's what's been my driving force.
I love the point about money talks. I just think it's absolutely
But the voter also talks. They're the same thing. That's what I mean. The consumer is the constituent. You have to use your agency. Otherwise, you are not being heard, and somebody else over there really is being heard.